Welcome to this second part of the assignment slides. So for this part, we'll be talking about the data source. Now the data source that you'll be using is actually from Kaggle, and it is actually a very large data set of images that have been taken from the retina of the eye. And the purpose of this data set is to really to detect whether or not the eye is normal or is actually suffering from a disease that's caused by diabetes, where the retina is actually becoming damaged. So this is actually a problem around the world, and this data set was collected in India, where they were trying to use image recognition techniques, machine learning, and deep learning to try to detect early signs of this disease being manifested in the retina images. Now, these images are taken from the field using field equipment, so the quality of the images do vary quite a bit, and that's one of the challenges in actually dealing with this data set. There is quite a large data set, so there are actually plenty of images to learn from, but the images quality vary quite a bit from sample to sample. Now, in order for you to download this data set, you must actually register as a user onto Kaggle, and Kaggle being a Google company, you need to use your Gmail or your other Google account in order to register into Kaggle and download the dataset. Just a word of warning, because Kaggle, they do verify the authenticity of the user accounts. Please use one that actually sounds genuine instead of a very fake sounding account, because you might be locked out if you use a fake or a non-genuine email account. The reason for this is because Kaggle do offer competitions where there's prize money, and hence they are quite sticky about the user accounts. And another thing which they will try to detect is when you have actually multiple users accounts being registered with the same maybe phone number, because that's another way that people try to cheat in some of these competitions, by creating multiple accounts and then just basically submitting a lot of entries under different names. So don't do that. So try to use a genuine account, and be careful not to register more than one account with the same ID. Otherwise, they might ban both or one of the accounts. So the data is actually collected under a variety of different conditions. As mentioned there, different imaging conditions, and both the left and right eye is actually taken. So left and right field means left and right eye, and the naming convention being used is that the subject ID or the patient ID is put in front and then followed by underscore and then left or right dot JPEG. And the label, the class label that's been assigned by the human clinician, basically tells us whether this image belongs to a normal eye or there is actually a sign of this disease in different degrees of progress. So 0 being no retinopathy means there's a normal eye. 1 being mild, 2 being moderate, 3 being severe, and 4 being very severe, basically. So your task is actually to try to understand how these images or the characteristic of the images are actually related to the different degrees of DR or the diabetic retinopathy. So you can build some sort of image classifier to do this, and this system will basically help the doctor to determine whether or not what's the stage of progress for this particular disease automatically, without having to require a human eye to actually look at it. Now this actually saves a lot of labor, because the quality of there are many images, and having an automated system to do this would save a huge amount of labor costs. And secondly, uh, there are not really that many people who are trained to recognize the different levels of severeness in the disease besides the doctors. So if you're able to actually so-called duplicate or replicate this knowledge in an automatic manner, that will actually increase the chance of early diagnosis of the disease rather than having to send this image and then join the queue for waiting for a medical practitioner to actually look at the image and then determine the severity. So if you're able to do this more quickly, then many more patients could have their eyesight saved. So like any real-world data set, you will encounter noise in the data, the images and labels. The images may contain artifacts, for example, out of focus or underexposed, that means too light, or overexposed, too bright. And the images are gathered from multiple clinics. So sometimes the cameras, they may have different sizes, or they may have um, all sorts of differences between due to the cameras themselves, rather than the disease. So this is a real world data set, so you need to cater for all these issues. So this is the website from which the data set is derived. You can get it from the earlier link. So this was actually run more than one round, this one being the earlier round. And the data set which I'm suggesting that you use takes it from this original data set, but they have resized the images to so that make your task a little bit simpler, because in the original data set, actually the images were not of the same resolution or size. So you have some that are 1024 by 768, and others that are actually smaller or bigger, right? So it's quite troublesome when you want to build image classifier, because basically if you use techniques like CNN or neural networks, you need to have a fixed size of input. So having different image sizes will just not be able to work. So images have been resized in this so-called normalized or pre-prepared data set for you. So what's the problem? So there are millions of people who actually suffer from this diabetic retinopathy, and the leading cause is actually the leading cause of blindness among working age adults. And this hospital, the Aravind Eye Hospital in India, hopes to be able to detect and prevent this disease among people living in the rural areas. So as I said, in the rural areas, you don't have so many medical practitioners. So oftentimes, the disease progress to some extent before people realize they actually have this condition, where the medical screening is quite difficult to conduct. Diabetic retinopathy is actually an eye condition that's caused the vision loss and blindness in people who have diabetes. It affects the blood vessels in the retina, which is the light sensitive area at the back of the eye. If you have diabetes, it is important to get a comprehensive eye examination to check if this disease is actually manifesting itself. It doesn't mean that everybody who has diabetes will have this disease, but there's a chance that it might occur. So regular checkup or screening is important. And you will work with thousands of images that have been collected in the rural areas to help to identify this particular disease automatically. And if you are successful, in fact, these techniques that are being developed could eventually save the visions of many people. Okay, what are the deliverables? The submission requirements is that you must present your work in a Jupyter notebook with all the code and comments as necessary. And you are also to generate a HTML version of the Jupyter notebook for convenience of submission when we assess it. Right, so the HTML version is just a saved version, saved as HTML version of your Jupyter notebook. And you can also generate a set of slides that contain the highlights of your methodology, the evaluation that you did, and also the results with different models that you obtained. So the PowerPoint slides don't need to be an exact duplicate of everything that's in your Jupyter notebook, just the highlights. And the Jupyter notebook should be as comprehensive as possible, because we will actually give you the grade based on what we can see in the notebook. And this is also a chance for you to practice presenting your work in logical and concise fashion so that people can understand and evaluate or not what is your result like, whether these results are dependable or not, right? So do be as complete as possible. If you think that this is something which may have different interpretations, do make sure that you put a note as to what is actually the correct interpretation in your mind that you wish to present to the end user, because you will not have a chance to basically describe everything that's in your notebook orally. So do be complete in your write-up within the notebook itself. So the advantage of Jupyter Notebook, of course, is that you can have your running code together with the markup that contains the so-called documentation within the notebook itself. So everything is combined together. So you do not need to have two separate documents, one from your Word and then one inside your script itself. So submit this electronically with everything zipped up, minus the data, because data set is too large. So you just have to present your notebook plus the HTML version, which contains the results, right? After you've done your plotting or your model and you dump out the evaluation results, they should all be contained within the HTML itself. So what is the marking criteria that will be used? So number one, in any data science or AI experiment, it's very important to understand the context and the data. So definitely there will be some marks given to your background research and also your exploratory data analysis. And getting the features right, what is the key features that you want to use in order to get the best results? Do you need to do some data augmentation in order to improve the performance of the classifier? Do you need to do some image processing to make the images easier to discern? This kind of feature engineering is something which you should consider. Then, of course, modeling and evaluation will be one part of your evaluation. And important in any machine learning experiment is really to see how you can move beyond just the basic results or whatever initial baseline model that you have to try to refine and improve it to get the best possible result given the data and given the particular algorithm. So we want to see how you try to improve the model beyond the baseline model that you have. And lastly, your demonstration of your presentation of your report, that would be the last component. How do you actually communicate your results to your users? And here are some of the references. Of course, you can refer to the notes that we've been given for this course, and also there's some additional notes given in the Kaggle site. The two Kaggle competitions that were held by the hospital in India. And thank you for your attention. We come to the end, and good luck.